The doctor's words blurred into background noise as Jose Johansson scanned the final page of the file. He'd reviewed dozens of these profiles. Efficient, clinical, predictable. But this one made him still. There, tucked in the lower left corner of Bridget Davies' intake sheet, sat the sentence that brought silence to the room. Patient has never been sexually active. The specialist didn't flinch. He continued with his rehearsed rhythm, talking embryo transfer cycles and hormone mapping. Bridget sat upright, hands folded in her lap, her eyes set forward like armor. Jose said nothing, didn't move. His fingers tightened slightly around the folder. His gaze locked on her, not with judgment, but with something harder to name. The doctor kept going. Given her first-time status, we'll need to introduce. Stop. The word came low, clipped, and final. The entire room froze. Bridget turned her head slightly toward him, but didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her jaw was set, her eyes sharp. Jose shut the folder. Cancel the procedure, he said to the doctor. The man blinked, confused. Sir, you heard me. We're not moving forward, but everything's aligned. Our labs are perfect. I said stop. Bridget's breath hitched, but she didn't let it show. Her voice was quiet but steady. So, this disqualifies me? Jose looked at her now. Really looked. You're a virgin? He asked, not as an accusation, just a question that didn't belong in a room this cold. She met his gaze. Yes. Does that change things, Mr. Johansson? He didn't answer right away. He stood instead, his chair scraping softly against the polished floor. Then he turned to the doctor. Step out, he said. All of you. The nurse and technician hesitated. The doctor looked uncomfortable, but they obeyed. Bridget sat frozen, chin held high. She was done explaining herself. And that's when he said it. Jose didn't pace. He didn't raise his voice. He simply stood still, tall, composed, unreadable. Bridget refused to shrink under his silence. If you're uncomfortable, just say so, she said plainly. I'm not here for pity or pretense. He looked at her for a long moment. Then his voice dropped, steady, rough, direct. I'm not the kind of man who takes a woman's first experience from a place of desperation. Her brows lifted just slightly. So this is you walking away? No, he said. This is me doing what I should have done the moment I read your file. He reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a thick envelope, and placed it on the exam table between them. Bridget didn't touch it. What's that? 50,000, he said. The first round of your mother's treatment. I'll cover the rest in full. She blinked. Slowly. You're canceling the surrogacy, but still paying for everything? He nodded. Her arms folded. Why? He didn't blink. Because no woman should have to trade the one thing she's kept for herself just to keep someone else alive. She stepped back like the air had shifted. This isn't charity, she warned. No, he said gently. It's respect. Bridget's eyes narrowed. You don't know me. No, he admitted, but I know enough. I know I'm not going to be the man who takes something sacred from a woman like you just to satisfy a contract. She was quiet now. Too quiet. Her voice came soft. And if I wanted to go through with it, then I'd still say no, he said, stepping closer. Because this shouldn't be your sacrifice to make. Their eyes locked, tension charged, quiet but unbreakable. And for a split second, Bridget didn't feel like a number in a file. She felt seen. Now pause for a second. What would you do if a man stopped everything? Not because he didn't want you, but because he refused to take what you weren't freely offering. What if he canceled a $500,000 agreement just to protect a part of you no one had ever valued before? Would you trust him? Would you walk away? Or would that moment, one so raw, so unexpected, be the one that rewired your entire understanding of love? If this story already has you leaning forward, I need you to do me a favor real quick. Tap the like button. It helps us tell stories that matter to more people. Drop a comment below and tell me what you would have done if you were Bridget. Walk away? Accept the help? Or challenge the man who finally saw your worth? And don't forget to subscribe, because here on Mr. Peterson Long Stories, we don't just tell love stories. We tell stories that make you feel, think, and maybe even heal a little. And hey, my daughter just launched her very own channel, and I'm so proud of her. Please show love to Miss Liana Peterson's stories, link in the description. She's telling beautiful, powerful tales that you don't want to miss. Head over there and hit subscribe. Now, Let's get back to the moment that changed Bridget's life forever. The envelope sat between them like a live wire. Bridget stared at it, but her attention wasn't really on the money. It was on him. Jose Johansson, the CEO who canceled a contract with a sentence, who stood there in $1,000 shoes, hands at his sides, no arrogance in his eyes. Just something else, something heavier. She didn't move, neither did he. The air between them wasn't filled with tension. It was something denser than that. It was choice. No speeches, no flattery, no terms to sign, just a moment suspended in stillness, where two people, from two very different worlds, stood on the edge of something neither of them could name. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in the room, but in her. She didn't know what he wanted from her. And for the first time in a long time, she believed him when he said nothing. Bridget Davy was 8 when the front door slammed for the last time. Her father didn't leave with drama, just silence. No note, no phone call, no goodbye. He vanished into the city, and Bridget never saw him again. They lived in Brownsville, Brooklyn. Not the version of Brooklyn that made it onto postcards or real estate ads, the other side. The one where broken glass lived in gutters and sirens filled the night like lullabies. Her mother, Viola, held everything together with cracked knuckles and quiet dignity. A housekeeper in high-rises she'd never be allowed to live in. The kind of woman who pressed her hair on Sunday, wore clean church shoes even when the soles had holes. Bridget remembered watching her scrub marble countertops while coughing into her elbow. It started small, just a tickle. But over time, the wheezing grew louder than the TV. By the time Bridget was 28, Viola's diagnosis came like a hammer. Stage 3 lung cancer. No insurance, no savings, just a list of treatments they couldn't afford. Bridget didn't cry. She folded up her dream and got to work. Bridget had always been the quiet one, not because she lacked voice, but because she learned early that speaking didn't always change outcomes. In high school, her art teacher once called her work visceral and begged her to apply for Parsons. She did, and she got in, with a full scholarship no less. For a moment, she thought that was her way out. A path paved not with struggle, but with color. She dreamed of designing album covers, murals on community buildings, maybe even a children's book someday. But the day Viola collapsed in the hallway, everything shifted. Hospital bills don't wait for inspiration. She withdrew from the program before her second semester, packed up her paints, traded canvas for time clocks. She worked mornings answering phones at a dentist's office, nights unloading pallets at a warehouse in Queens, weekends mopping floors in the same buildings her mother once cleaned. Rent still came late. The fridge was often light, but she didn't complain, not once, because nobody was coming to save them. Not back then. Not now. And Bridget had long made peace with the fact that survival meant sacrifice. Bridget didn't wear pride like jewelry. She wore it like armor. She didn't ask for help, not because she was stubborn, but because pity had a scent, and she'd smelled it too many times in rooms that called themselves charity. From the age of 10, she watched how people looked at her mother, like a woman who should be grateful for crumbs. Bridget swore she'd never be seen that way. So she built a code. Never be weak. Never be pitied. Never be used. She let that code guide her through every decision, turning down offers that came with conditions, walking away from men who only saw her curves, never her character. Love? Maybe one day, but only if it saw her fully, not as a struggle to rescue, but as a force to stand beside. She'd had chances, handsome ones, sweet ones, but none strong enough to handle a woman like her, who didn't flinch when the lights were cut or the fridge went empty. She knew what she was worth. And she'd rather eat beans and rice in silence than let someone pay her dignity in installments. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon. A low-voiced woman from a private surrogacy agency said they'd received Bridget's application. They were moving quickly. The intended parent was a high-profile client, confidential, generous. The offer, $500,000. Bridget didn't flinch. She took down the date, the time, the location. Then she hung up and sat in silence for a long time. This wasn't some whim. She hadn't applied on a broken-hearted night or out of desperation. She'd done the math, twice. Her mother's treatments, a new apartment, a future that didn't involve juggling 3 shifts and hoping the heat stayed on, but it still hurt. The one thing she'd guarded all her life, her body, her first time, her own sense of control, would now be reduced to logistics, injections, and legal paperwork. She wasn't ashamed of her choice, but she hated what it said about the world. A world where a black woman with strength and backbone had to bargain with biology just to keep her mother alive. So she set her terms: no pity, no personal contact, no stories, just the procedure, the paycheck, and peace. But peace wasn't what walked into that room wearing a tailored shirt and storm-colored eyes. And that's when the story truly began. Jose Johansson didn't grow up in boardrooms or penthouses. He grew up on the 6th floor of a walk-up in the South Bronx, raised by a woman who refused to let her son inherit bitterness. His father, a Swedish architect with perfect diction and zero paternal instinct, had met his mother, Esperanza, while overseeing a construction project in the city. Their affair was fast and full of promises. But when Esperanza told him she was pregnant, he handed her an envelope and a cold goodbye. Shay never saw him again. He never forgot him either. His mother worked 3 cleaning jobs and ran a side hustle braiding hair on weekends. She taught him 2 rules: speak with clarity and never bow your head for anyone. Jose learned early how to balance books, how to repair a broken stove, how to fight off boys twice his size if they tried to snatch his notebook. He read voraciously, took every test like it was a passport, and studied by the flicker of borrowed electricity when the lights went out. He didn't grow up hating his absent father, but he did grow up determined to never be that kind of man. By the time Jose turned 16, he'd already outgrown his zip code. He didn't just want out, he wanted ownership of his time, his choices, his legacy. His SAT scores were near perfect. His essays didn't beg for sympathy. They declared war on statistics. Every admissions counselor that read his file circled one word beside his name: relentless. He landed at Princeton with a full ride, majored in engineering and minored in economics. Because he knew vision alone wouldn't get him far, he needed strategy, leverage. By 23, he had offers from every top firm in the country. He said no to all of them. Instead, he took a risk, started Johansson Innovations from a shared WeWork space in Harlem, with a loan co-signed by a former professor. His first product? A patent-pending sensor tech for smart elevators. Within 5 years, he was everywhere. Forbes, Wired, back covers of business journals. They called him the quiet storm of tech. By 38, he'd scaled his company past $7 billion in valuation. Yet for all the cars, the glass-walled offices, and international deals, he still came home to silence, and not the peaceful kind. Jose had been engaged 3 times. The first was a fellow Ivy grad with ambition sharper than her smile. She loved the chase, not the man. By the time he realized it, she was already measuring her name in headlines, not vows. The second was a model-turned-entrepreneur who spoke about loyalty but flirted with venture capitalists behind his back. When he confronted her, she cried into her champagne and called him paranoid. The third? That one hurt the most. She was sweet, soft-spoken. She met his mother and even helped plan Esperanza's 60th birthday dinner. Jose thought he'd finally found someone who saw him, until he overheard her on a phone call with her cousin, mapping out what his last name would look like on a product line she hadn't earned. That night, he ended it. Quietly, firmly. After that, he stopped trying. He went to fundraisers, galas, award shows, escorted by women handpicked by PR teams, smiles without weight, conversations without intimacy, nights without warmth. Jose had built his empire from nothing, but when it came to love, all he ever had was everything but the truth. Legacy had always been on his mind, not just wealth, not just buildings with his name stamped on them, but something, someone, to carry forward what he couldn't say out loud. A child raised with love, not debt. With truth, not silence. After his 3rd failed engagement, Jose explored adoption. But between red tape, media attention, and unspoken biases, the doors kept closing. That's when he turned to surrogacy. It was clinical, controlled, safe. No emotional exposure, no betrayal. Just a path to fatherhood without the chaos of romance. Or so he thought, until he saw her file. Bridget Davy, clean medical history, physically ideal, strong psychological profile. But one note stopped him cold. Never sexually active. He read it twice. Then, when she walked into the consultation suite, brown eyes clear, posture firm, and a calm that refused to bend, he understood why that note wasn't just data. It was a warning. Because this wasn't just a woman with the right body. This was a woman with boundaries carved in steel. And something about that made every part of his carefully planned world feel fragile. He wanted an heir, but he wasn't ready for a woman who might make him feel again. And yet, here she was. The Midtown suite was too quiet. Polished floors, sterile walls, and windows overlooking skyscrapers that touched the clouds, but all Bridget could hear was the faint tap of her own thumb against her blazer button. She sat at the edge of the exam bench, hands folded neatly, legs crossed at the ankle. She'd worn her best thrifted slacks and Charity Foundation blazer, the one that fit like a maybe. Across from her sat Jose Johansson, 6'5", shirt sleeves rolled up, cufflinks off, every bit the executive, but something about him felt unusually still, like he was watching everything and giving nothing. The fertility specialist, a middle-aged man with a calm voice and years of experience in his tone, began listing the process. Your cycle looks ideal, Miss Davy. No known allergies, no autoimmune flags, embryo viability is high. We'll begin with cervical dilation protocols to ensure transfer is smooth given the first-time status, then follow through with... Jose didn't blink. Bridget didn't flinch, but the silence between them pulsed. Then the doctor said it. First-time status. And that's when everything shifted. The doctor was still talking, mentioning hormone levels, transfer windows, lining thickness, but Jose had stopped listening. That phrase repeated in his head like static, first-time status. He turned to the file in front of him, flipped back a page. His eyes found the line again. Clear, stark. Patient has never been sexually active. It wasn't bolded. It wasn't emphasized. But to Jose, it hit like thunder. The nurse began prepping a tray in the background, cotton pads, vials, sterile gloves. The assistant approached Bridget with a clipboard, gently asking her to sign off on procedure steps. Jose raised his hand. Pause. Everyone stopped. The doctor cleared his throat. Mr. Johansson is there. We're not moving forward. Bridget's head turned sharply. Excuse me? Jose stood. Not abrupt, not dramatic, but deliberate. The nurse glanced at the doctor, then quietly stepped back toward the cabinets. Bridget kept her tone measured. If this is about what's in the file, it's not a mistake. He looked at her. I know. Then why are you stopping this? His answer was quiet, but final. Because I read everything. And I'm not pretending that line doesn't matter. Bridget didn't shift in her seat, but her chin lifted, just slightly. Just enough. You knew I hadn't, she started, then stopped herself. The agency was transparent. That information was there from the beginning. Jose nodded. It was, and yet here we are. You scheduled this meeting. You signed off on the labs. You knew. I did. So why the sudden morality? Her voice didn't rise, but it hit with precision. You think this makes me fragile? No, he said. I think it makes you valuable. Bridget blinked. Slowly. That's not your call. He stepped closer, but not too close. I'm not judging you, Bridget. I'm trying to understand. Why choose this, when you've held on to something so personal for so long? Her reply came with no delay. Because my mother is dying, and I didn't have anything else left to sell. Jose exhaled through his nose, slow. I don't want this process to take something from you that can't be returned. She tilted her head. What exactly do you think you're protecting me from? Myself, he said, and every part of me that's been trained to complete contracts without asking what they cost. Bridget rose from the bench slowly. No panic, no hesitation, just quiet authority in a room full of men used to control. You think I need saving? She asked, her voice low. Because you're not the first rich man to mistake discomfort for compassion. Jose stayed where he was. That's not what this is. Then, what is it? She stepped forward. A conscience project? Some last-minute guilt trip because you realized I don't fit the profile? He didn't flinch. You do fit the profile. You're stronger than anyone I've met. That's not an answer. She wasn't angry. She was direct. It was worse. I walked in here with full awareness, she continued. I know what I'm offering. I know what I'm risking. What I don't know is why you suddenly care. Jose's jaw tightened, because I didn't expect it to feel like this. Like what? Like I was taking something from you. She folded her arms. You were paying for it. That's what this is, right? No. His voice deepened. That's what it was. Silence. I didn't come here to be disarmed by a stranger, she said finally. And I didn't come here to feel like one. he replied. Jose didn't move closer. He didn't lower his voice for effect. He just looked at her, level, open, unguarded. I've signed 9-figure deals without blinking, he said. I've taken companies apart with less emotion than this conversation. But right now, I don't care about the contract. I care about you walking out of here intact. Bridget's eyes searched his. Not for pity, not for affection, for contradiction. She didn't find any. You cancel this, she said, and I walk out with nothing but a sick mother and a broken lease. He nodded, which is why I already transferred the first payment toward her hospital bill. Her brows lifted. You did that without asking me? I did it because I'm not going to let you gamble your body to buy time. She crossed her arms again, but her stance was looser now. You don't get to decide what sacrifices I make. I know. Then why step in at all? Because I've spent my whole life mastering control, he said. And you're the first person who made me question where control ends and conscience begins. Bridget looked at him for a long moment, and for once, she didn't have a comeback. Bridget didn't wait for the elevator. She took the stairs 2 at a time, every step louder than the breath she held in. Her palms were damp. Her throat burned. But her face? It was stone. She didn't expect to see him again. Not in that hallway. Not 5 minutes later. But there he stood, just outside the exit door. No coat, no entourage, just a plain envelope in his hand and something unreadable in his eyes. She froze mid-step. Jose didn't move. He simply extended the envelope toward her. What is that? She asked, voice flat. The first payment for your mother's treatment, he said. She didn't take it. Not yet. You came after me to hand me a check? No, he said. I came after you because I didn't want this to end in silence. Her eyes flickered down to the envelope, then back to his face. And you think that makes this better? No, he replied calmly. But I think it makes it honest. She stepped closer, arms folded, spine straight. But she still didn't touch the envelope. Let me guess, she said. You feel guilty. Jose didn't flinch. I don't feel guilty, he said. I feel responsible. There's a difference. Bridget crossed her arms tighter. So this is responsibility now? Dropping checks on women who need help and walking away? I'm not walking away. You canceled the procedure. I canceled the part that asked you to give up something you didn't owe me. She gave a small laugh, dry, bitter. You don't know what I owe. You think this is about virginity? About purity? No, he said. It's about dignity. That made her blink. He stepped closer, his tone still even. You walked into that room prepared to trade something intimate. Not because you were forced, not because you were naive, but because love made you desperate. I respect that more than you'll ever know. She swallowed hard but held her gaze. This isn't a favor, he added. It's acknowledgement. Bridget stared at the envelope again. I've seen men throw money to fix guilt, she muttered. They always expect gratitude. You don't owe me anything, he said. Not a thank you, not a second conversation. Then why do this? He exhaled. Because you walked in there willing to bleed, and the least I could do was make sure you didn't have to. Bridget finally reached for the envelope, but didn't open it. Her fingers closed around it with practiced calm, the kind you use when you don't want someone to see your hands shaking. Jose didn't say a word. You know, she said after a long pause, I didn't expect anything from you. I figured you'd look at the file, sign the contract, collect your child, and disappear. I would've, he admitted. If you were someone else. She studied him, careful. So, what am I? He hesitated. Uncomfortable, he said. In the best way. That pulled a breath out of her she didn't plan to release. I've had men look at me like a solution, she said. Or a problem. You're the first one who looked at me like a person. He met her gaze without blinking. That won't change. Bridget's jaw tensed. It should. You don't know me. You think that's a reason to walk away? I think it's a reason not to trust this. Jose nodded slowly. Fair. And I'm not someone you get to fix. I'm not here to fix you, Bridget. I'm here because I saw you, and I couldn't walk out of that room like I hadn't. Her guard didn't drop, but for the first time, it tilted. The hallway was still, the kind of stillness that follows when something unspoken hangs between two people, too real to name, too early to touch. Bridget tucked the envelope into her coat pocket without breaking eye contact. You said I don't owe you anything, she said. Does that mean I can forget this ever happened? Jose nodded once. If that's what you want. She watched him, measured. And if I don't know what I want, then I'll wait, he said simply. She frowned. Wait for what? For whatever comes next. Bridget didn't respond to that. Not right away. She turned her body slightly toward the stairwell, shoulders squared, posture crisp. But she didn't walk away. Not yet. Jose took the hint. He stepped back. I won't contact you, he said gently. No pressure, no games. She tilted her head. Then why the envelope? Because I'm not the man who lets a woman bleed for him in silence. That landed. Harder than he expected. And with that, he turned and walked away. No drama, no last glance. But as the stairwell door clicked shut behind him, Bridget felt something unexpected rise in her chest. Not fear, not anger, but possibility. Bridget didn't give him her address. But she wasn't surprised when Jose found it anyway. He showed up on a Thursday afternoon. No driver, no fanfare, just a soft knock on the security door and a voice through the buzzer that said, "It's me, 10 minutes, that's all." She let him in, mostly out of curiosity, maybe something else, but she wouldn't name it. He stepped into her cramped two-bedroom walk-up like a man entering a sacred place. No jokes, no comments about the space, just quiet awareness. The kitchen smelled faintly of lavender detergent and the last batch of rice she cooked for her mother. Jose stood in the narrow entryway, holding a small bouquet wrapped in brown paper. His coat was damp from the drizzle outside. His eyes didn't scan the room like a man judging. It was more like he was memorizing. Bridget motioned toward the back bedroom. "She's awake," she said, "but some days are better than others." He nodded, carefully setting the flowers on the counter. "I won't stay long." She watched him take a breath. Then she opened the door. Viola was propped up against two pillows, a knit scarf wrapped around her shoulders and an oxygen tube resting gently at her nose. Her eyes were alert, though, sharp and assessing as they always were. When Bridget entered first, Viola's brow lifted. "You bring company?" Jose stepped in behind her, unassuming. "Only if you're accepting visitors today, ma'am." Viola blinked, then gave the faintest smile. "You the man who paid my medical bill?" "I'm the one who helped a little," Jose replied. "You did the rest by staying alive." That earned a soft chuckle from her, worn but real. Bridget stood to the side, watching closely as Jose pulled up the old chair beside Viola's bed. He didn't sit like a man performing. He sat like someone who came to listen. "What's your story?" he asked her quietly. Viola tilted her head. "You really want to know?" "Yes, ma'am." So she told him. About growing up in Georgia. About moving to New York with a suitcase and a baby. About raising Bridget without losing her soul. She didn't make it poetic. She made it plain. And Jose never interrupted once. From the kitchen doorway, Bridget leaned against the frame, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She'd expected him to be polite, maybe even generous. But this was different. Jose wasn't talking about his company. He wasn't performing empathy. He was listening, really listening. He asked Viola about the book she used to read to Bridget, about the recipe Bridget always mentioned, about what gave her joy before the illness. And Viola answered, no caution, no nerves, just a mother talking to a man who somehow made the air less heavy. Bridget's guard twitched, because men like Jose didn't do small kitchens and thinning pillows. Men like him didn't ask real questions. And yet, here he was, knees close to her mother's bed, elbows resting on his thighs, letting her mother tease him about being too polished to know how to wash greens properly. He took it all in stride. When he laughed, it wasn't showy. When he looked at Viola, it wasn't pity. And when his eyes flicked once, just once, toward Bridget, it wasn't for approval. It was gratitude. That was the moment something inside her shifted. Quiet, careful, but real. When Viola grew tired and her breathing slowed, Bridget walked Jose back to the kitchen. She expected him to leave with a nod or maybe a parting line about checking in. But instead, he reached for the flowers he'd brought and unwrapped them gently, placing them into the chipped glass she used as a vase. He didn't look at her. He just said, "You got her laugh, you know that?" Bridget folded her arms but didn't respond. He turned then, nothing rehearsed in his expression, just quiet admiration. "She's the kind of woman who bends the world around her. Now I see where you get it." Bridget tried to smirk, but it didn't land. Too much feeling hovered beneath the surface. "You don't have to charm her, you know," she said. "She's not the one who needs convincing." Jose nodded. I'm not here to convince anyone. Then what are you doing? Seeing you, he said. Outside that file, outside that clinic. She didn't respond right away. But when he stepped toward the door, she said, softly but clear, you can come back. If she asks. He paused, nodded once, and left without another word. And the silence he left behind felt warm, not empty. The rain hit the pavement in steady rhythm, turning Manhattan's glow into a soft blur of white and gold. Bridget stood outside the penthouse tower with soaked curls clinging to her temples and nerves coiled tight beneath her skin. She hadn't called. She hadn't even thought it through. She just showed up. By the time the concierge buzzed upstairs, her hands were trembling. Not from the cold. Jose opened the door himself. Gray joggers, bare feet, a black t-shirt clinging to his chest like it was stitched in place. No questions on his face. Just stillness. He looked at her like a storm had knocked her onto his doorstep, and maybe it had. I shouldn't be here, she said, her voice calm but uncertain. I know, he replied. I told myself I was done letting people close. A pause. And now? She lifted her chin. Now, I want to forget the world for one night. He didn't speak. He just stepped aside and let her in. The air inside was warm. Quiet. No music, no scent but cedar and clean air. Bridget toed off her wet shoes, leaving a small trail behind her. But Jose said nothing. He just waited. She didn't follow him all the way in. Instead, Bridget stood in the center of the hallway, damp, breath shallow, eyes fixed on the floor like it might steady her. Jose leaned against the wall a few feet away, arms crossed, saying nothing. Finally, she spoke. I don't do this, she said. Show up, uninvited, unraveled. His voice was calm. You're not unraveled. She gave a soft huff. You don't know what it costs me to want someone like you. His brow tightened. Why me? Because you don't need me, she said. And that makes me wonder if you actually see me, or if I'm just some noble choice you made to feel like a good man. Jose stepped forward, but slowly. No pressure, no performance. I didn't ask you to come here. I know. I didn't make promises. I know that too. He held her gaze. So why are you here, Bridget? Her voice cracked, just once. Because I can't stop thinking about the way you looked at me. Like I wasn't a transaction, like I was real. Jose's chest rose. You are. She took a single step toward him. I'm scared of what I want, because I've never had it. Jose didn't reach for her right away. He let the moment settle, like he knew if he moved too fast it would collapse. You don't owe me anything, he said. I know that, she whispered. Then tell me what you want. Bridget swallowed, throat tight. I want to not feel broken for wanting something gentle. That was all he needed. He walked toward her slowly, offering his hand, not grabbing, not demanding, just holding it out. She placed hers in his, and for the first time in her life, letting someone touch her didn't feel like surrender. It felt like choice. He led her to the bedroom without a word, their steps quiet on the hardwood. She stood still at the foot of the bed, heart hammering beneath her soaked blouse. If you touch me, she said, it can't be out of guilt, or sympathy, or some need to prove you're different. It won't be. It has to be real. He stepped closer, hands still by his sides. It is. Bridget exhaled. He reached for her slowly, his fingers brushing the collar of her damp shirt, then tracing along her shoulders, her arms. Her breath hitched, but she didn't pull away. He kissed her forehead first, then her cheek, then hovered at her lips like asking for permission without saying a word. She gave it with a nod. The kiss was soft, anchoring, like he'd been waiting to breathe until she said yes. He undressed her like a ceremony, not an act, pausing at each new patch of skin as if to memorize it. And when she reached for his shirt, he let her pull it off, their skin meeting in warm silence. He laid her down like she mattered, and when he entered her, it wasn't about claiming anything. It was about making space. She gasped, part wonder, part release, and he held her through it, slow, steady, and reverent, like she was the first thing that had ever made him stop chasing power long enough to feel. Bridget didn't speak, not when he moved inside her like he already knew where she hurt, not when his mouth found the places she had hidden even from herself. She just held on, to the moment, to him, to the permission she finally gave herself to be fully seen. His hands traced the arch of her back, the curve of her hips, the softness of her stomach, not with curiosity, but with care. She felt it, every time he slowed his pace to match her breathing. Every time he paused just long enough for her to look into his eyes and know this wasn't about control. It was about choosing her. And for once, she didn't feel like a body on a contract. She felt wanted. Her fingers found the back of his neck, her lips brushed his shoulder, and her voice, so rarely let loose, whispered, "Don't let go." "I won't," he breathed. When she finally came undone beneath him, it wasn't loud. It was layered. A slow, silent quake that lived in the way she curled into him afterward. No more armor, no more defense, just Bridget. And when she drifted off to sleep, tucked beneath his arm, he didn't move. He held her like something precious he never expected to find. The sky was still pale when Bridget slipped out from under the sheets. Jose was still asleep, arm draped across the space where she'd been, lips parted slightly, peaceful in a way that made her chest ache. She stood in the doorway of his bedroom, fully dressed, clutching her coat in both hands like a shield. The night had been perfect, and that terrified her. No one had ever touched her like that. Not just with care, but with belief. Like he wasn't just interested in her body, but everything she had fought to protect. And now that it was morning, she didn't know what to do with that. Bridget moved quietly through his living room, grabbing her bag from the couch. Her heels were still damp by the door. She picked them up barefoot. No note, no goodbye, no second guessing. She didn't want him to wake up and see the look in her eyes. The one that said, "If I stay, I might start believing I deserve this." She left the penthouse before the city even stirred. And by the time the sun fully rose, she was already halfway back to Brooklyn, heart racing with every stop the train made. 3 days passed. No texts, no calls, no driver outside. Just quiet. It wasn't the kind of silence Bridget was used to, cold or dismissive. This one felt intentional, like he was giving her room to breathe, but still holding space for something. She kept herself busy, wiped down the same counters twice, reorganized her mother's pill trays, answered every call like it might be from someone else, but it never was. And yet, every time she heard footsteps in the hallway, her heart beat a little faster. On the 4th night, she opened the door to the sound of a knock. Jose stood there in a black coat, hood down, face unreadable. He held a bouquet of deep red tulips in one hand. No theatrics, no speech ready. "Hi," he said. Bridget leaned against the doorframe. "Took you long enough." He didn't smile. "I wanted to make sure you weren't running for real." She stepped back to let him in. Viola's bedroom door was closed. The apartment was dim, quiet, just the hum of the fridge breaking the tension. Jose didn't sit, didn't ask. He just stood in front of her, hands by his sides. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said. "Just to understand." Bridget crossed her arms, but not out of anger. Out of defense she hadn't decided to lower yet. "Why now?" she asked. "Why come back if you were willing to let me go?" "I wasn't letting you go," Jose replied. "I was giving you the choice I knew you weren't used to having." She stared at him. "That night," she started, then paused. "You made me feel seen, not tolerated, not evaluated, but seen. And that scared me." "I've figured," he said gently. "You left like someone who knew what it meant to be disappointed." "I didn't leave because of you," she said. "I left because of me." Jose stepped forward slightly, enough to close the space, but not crowd her. "You're allowed to be afraid, Bridget. You're just not required to face it alone." Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to be with someone who doesn't want to own me. I don't want ownership. I want partnership." Her eyes glistened but didn't fall. "You want a child. I'm not sure I even know what I want anymore. Then let's figure it out together. Not because I need saving, not because you do, but because neither of us deserves to go through this pretending we don't care." The silence stretched between them, thick but not heavy. Bridget finally exhaled. "You make things feel safe, and I don't know what to do with that." Jose nodded. "Most people call that comfort. I've never had it last." "I'm not offering a guarantee," he said. "I'm offering time and presence." She searched his face, looking for the catch, the condition, the quiet hook she'd learned to expect. But there was none. "Say I let you stay," she said. "Say I let this continue. What happens when things get messy, when I don't have answers? Then I'll be the one sitting across from you asking new questions." Bridget stepped back, just enough to lean on the counter. Her arms dropped to her sides. "No control, no contracts, no conditions?" "None," he said. "Just two people trying to get it right, without pretending we've done it before." A beat. Then she nodded, slowly. "Okay." Jose didn't reach for her hand. He just stood there, steady, letting her decide. And when she finally walked over and rested her forehead against his chest, just for a moment, it wasn't surrender. It was agreement. No promises, just presence. And that was more than enough, for now. The air between them shifted the moment she leaned into his chest. No words were exchanged, no expectations declared. But everything they didn't say moved between them, unspoken, undeniable. Bridget tilted her head up slowly, eyes meeting his. And then she kissed him. This wasn't slow or tentative like the first time. It was bold, certain. Her hands gripped the collar of his coat, pulling him down to her mouth with the kind of hunger that only comes after letting go of fear. Jose responded instantly, mouth opening, hands sliding up her sides like he'd been holding back for days. They moved through the small kitchen in a blur of friction and breath. He backed her gently into the wall, but she twisted them instead, pressing him against it. Her palms flattened over his chest. Her eyes were locked on his. "I'm not glass," she said between kisses. "Stop handling me like I'll break." His voice was rough. "I wasn't sure what you wanted." "This," she said, tugging his coat off his shoulders. "But real?" He didn't ask again. He just gave her exactly what she asked for, without apology. Jose tried to guide her toward the couch, but Bridget shook her head. "No," she whispered. "Not somewhere soft." Her hands moved fast, gripping his belt, dragging it free in one pull. The sound cut through the air like punctuation. She stepped back just enough to look at him, shirt untucked, lips bruised from her kiss, chest rising like he was trying not to lose control. "Don't slow down for me," she said. "I don't need careful. I need real." He swallowed hard, standing perfectly still. "Tell me what you want, Bridget." She walked toward him slowly, peeled off her top with one motion, dropped it to the floor. "I want to feel owned," she said, "but not possessed." He reached out, knuckles grazing the waistband of her jeans. "Say it again." Her eyes locked on his. "I want to feel chosen." That's when he lost his hesitation. He picked her up, effortless, urgent, and carried her to the kitchen counter. It was cold against her thighs, but she didn't flinch. She spread her legs and pulled him between them. Her breath hitched as he bit down gently on her collarbone, tongue trailing the path his hands had claimed. No worship, just want, and it was hers to control. Jose tugged her jeans down with force, but his eyes stayed on hers, watching for doubt, for hesitation. There was none. Bridget braced herself with one hand on the countertop and the other gripping the back of his neck. "Don't wait," she said. "Just take me." His mouth crashed against hers again, all teeth and heat, and then he dropped to his knees, dragging her hips closer with a growl that vibrated through her spine. He tasted her like a man starved, no hesitation, no teasing. Bridget gasped, one hand flying to his hair, anchoring him there. Her thighs trembled as he pushed her closer to the edge, tongue relentless, fingers gripped tight into her skin. She came hard, unexpectedly, crying out his name like a confession. But he wasn't done. He rose slowly, mouth wet, expression wrecked. He flipped her around with a grip that said everything and a whisper that said more. "Still want control?" She looked over her shoulder. "I want you all in." He entered her fast, one deep, precise thrust that made her cry out again. They moved like opposites that had finally found their rhythm, grit and grace, fire and surrender. Every thrust answered a question she hadn't dared ask. Every moan was her saying yes again and again. Bridget's breath came in broken waves, her palms flat against the counter, as Jose drove into her with rhythm and purpose. There was no gentleness in his pace, but there was precision. Control. Care. He wasn't using her. He was matching her. When she pushed back, he gave more. When she tightened around him, he slowed, just enough to keep her wanting, never enough to make her beg. Her voice shook. "Don't stop." "Not a chance," he grunted, wrapping his arm around her waist and pulling her back into his chest. Still connected. Still moving. She turned her head slightly, breath mingling with his. "You're still looking at me. I haven't looked away since the day you walked in." Her body locked, then shuddered, again, and he held her through it. Not just her body, her breaking point, her trust, her release. They stayed pressed together after, skin slick with sweat, heartbeats sinking in the silence. Bridget turned slowly in his arms. He reached for a dish towel nearby and cleaned her off without a word. She didn't protest. She just watched him, this man who had just taken her completely, without taking anything from her. She cupped his face and kissed him once, soft, slow. "I see you too," she said, and he smiled like it finally meant something. 12 months later, Bridget stood in front of a modest brick building in Flatbush, watching the new bronze plaque being mounted by hand. The Viola Davy Foundation. Below it, in smaller print, empowerment through dignity, health, choice. Inside the building, the hum of preparation filled the halls. Volunteers setting up for the ribbon cutting, community leaders checking their notes, and local media testing camera angles. Bridget wasn't just a face for the foundation, she was its voice. She wrote every grant application, interviewed every staff member, vetted every partnership. This wasn't charity, this was her life's work, carved out of pain and resilience. Beside her stood Jose, sleeves rolled up, clipboard in hand, nodding as a coordinator updated him on equipment donations. He hadn't come to make headlines. He came to build. They weren't married, not yet, but the way their names appeared side by side on the legal documents made it clear this was a union in every way that counted, and no one made decisions alone. Bridget never moved uptown. Despite Jose's quiet offers, a brownstone, a condo, a private elevator, she stayed in Brooklyn. Her block, her pace, her rhythm. She upgraded the apartment, sure, put in new flooring, updated the kitchen, and made space for a home office where she handled foundation work during late nights. But she stayed, because legacy wasn't about elevation, it was about grounding. The people in her neighborhood didn't call her CEO. They called her Miss Bridget, sometimes just B. And they showed up, not because she handed out hope in pamphlets, but because she remembered names. She remembered faces. Kids who'd seen her carry groceries on the 3 train now saw her on flyers in community centers. But nothing about her changed, not her walk, not her tone, not the way she made eye contact like every conversation mattered. She wasn't trying to escape where she came from. She was turning it into something better, on her terms. And Jose? He never once asked her to leave it behind. Viola was back. Not just breathing without the machines, not just walking more than a block. She was living. She spent her mornings tending to the tiny herb garden on the foundation rooftop and her afternoons running caregiver support circles in the community room. No script, just wisdom, straight talk, laughter when needed. She had become the soul of the foundation, and everyone knew it. "Don't call me inspirational," she told a journalist once. "Call me grateful, and tired of watching black women disappear when no one's looking." Her laugh had returned, loud, open, contagious. And when she teased Bridget in public, people saw it as love. When she teased Jose, they saw it as permission. He always took it in stride, even when she side-eyed his suits or told him he was too pretty to be that quiet. Viola never called him son-in-law. She called him that man with sense. Bridget never corrected her, because in the ways that mattered, he was already family. Jose still ran Johansson Innovations. He still negotiated contracts, sat on panels, and led quarterly strategy reviews with the same intensity he always had. But his calendar looked different now. 3 days a week he worked from a spare desk inside the foundation. No assistant, no fanfare. Just a laptop and a folder filled with ideas for expansion, outreach, and scholarships. He didn't hover over Bridget's leadership. He respected it. He learned when to step in and when to step back, when to offer funding and when to offer silence, when to challenge and when to yield. He never made her world feel small to fit his. Instead, he walked into it, willing, open, curious. On Fridays, he cooked dinner for Viola while Bridget reviewed the week's reports. On Sundays, they sat on the apartment stoop with coffee and talked about everything except work. He didn't stay because she needed him. He stayed because he needed this, not the penthouse, not the power, her. The room was full, not with donors or executives, but with nurses, caregivers, high school seniors, and mothers who knew her name before they knew her title. Bridget stood at the podium, a pale blue dress hugging her frame, a gold pin of her mother's initials resting over her heart. Applause faded as she looked out over the crowd. She didn't read from a script. She didn't need to. "My mother taught me that dignity isn't given," she said, voice steady. "You protect it. You live it. And when you've been through enough, you start building places where others can feel it too. She paused, not for effect, just to breathe. And this building is one of those places. The applause that followed was loud, but it didn't rattle her, because this time she wasn't shrinking to fit the room. She was standing in it, fully. Jose didn't take a seat up front. He stood near the back wall, hands in his pockets, dress shirt open at the collar, watching her with a kind of pride that didn't need to be spoken out loud. He wasn't there for applause. He was there for her. Every time she looked up, she knew exactly where to find him. Not in the spotlight, not trying to be seen, but holding space. When the cameras flashed, they caught his silhouette behind her, unobtrusive, present, quietly proud. An older man beside him whispered, "That your wife?" Jose gave the smallest smile. Not yet. But the way he said it left no doubt she was already everything. After the speeches, after the ribbon had been cut and the cameras lowered, Bridget stepped outside for air. Jose met her at the garden walkway beside the building. In his arms, wrapped in a yellow blanket and pink headband, was their daughter, no more than 6 months old, wide-eyed and blinking up at the sky like it was something she intended to remember. Bridget reached for her, cradling the baby close to her chest. The little girl cooed once, then rested her head against her mother's collarbone, fingers curled tight into Bridget's blouse. "Look at her," Bridget whispered. "Doesn't even know how much she changed everything." Jose stepped behind them, one hand on Bridget's hip, the other gently brushing the curls on his daughter's tiny head. They didn't say much. They didn't need to, because in that moment, on a Brooklyn sidewalk, in front of a building named for the woman who raised her, Bridget wasn't just a survivor. She was a mother, a partner, a builder, and everything that had once tried to reduce her now stood behind her. So let me ask you this. What does dignity mean? When everything's on the line, is it holding on when the world pushes you to break? Is it walking away from survival when you finally taste love? Or is it choosing to build something sacred, even when it scares you? If this story moved you, even just a little, do me a favor. Like this video so more people can hear stories that matter. Comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Bridget's shoes? Subscribe to this channel, Mr. Peterson Long Stories, for more powerful storytelling every week without fail. And listen, my daughter just launched her own channel, Miss Liana Peterson Stories. If you love stories like this one, deep, emotional, honest, go subscribe and support her journey too. She's bringing heat, and she's just getting started. Because stories like Bridget's, they don't just entertain, they teach us that real love, real legacy, it's never bought, it's built.